My name is Ali Hamoud. I'm 23 years old. I live in Sydney, Australia, and I study construction management and property at the University of New South Wales. Approximately in Australia there's around 22 million people. It's a quite multicultural environment, different types of races and religions, and people from all different parts of the world. It's not necessarily hard to be religious or committed to the religion, but it helps that, like what I had a family that had a generally Islamic environment, so it sort of helped me in being religious. But generally, sometimes you will see people go down the wrong path, and that's because they don't have that surrounding that helps them or that motivates them to be interested in their religion. It's hard to keep that religious spirituality in you sometimes, but once you attach yourself to it, you feel as in these countries you don't take it as much for granted as you will in those other countries like Iraq and Iran, for example, because it is always there in front of you and it's sort of always in your face. The commitment of Muslims to the month of Ramadan in Australia, I would say it's a strong commitment. That's probably the time of the year, other than Ashura, where you see the mosque is packed. Like it's hundreds and hundreds of people at the masjid. The only sad thing is that after Ramadan, keeping that spirituality up and continuing to go to the masjid. But the commitment is strong. Every night, several centres and masajid hold lectures. You see hundreds of children attending to watch the lectures. Then you have our Quran recitations that even the youth join in and they learn how to recite the Quran. And then especially during Layal al-Qadr, you see the masajid are, you can't even find a spot in the masjid because of how full it is. People that I'm around, I know that they're excited for the month of Ramadan when it is approaching, and everyone's always saying, oh, I can't wait, it's my favourite time of the year, especially because there is that brotherhood that you sense. There's some people that you only see during Ramadan at the masjid, and you won't see them any other time of the year. And a lot of my friends that I met, my good Muslim friends, I met during Ramadan, and that's when we started hanging out. And we used to finish the lecture in the masjid during Ramadan, and the Quran recitations and all the a'mal, and we used to go back to someone's house and we used to sit and continue a discussion about religion. So that was definitely something that I loved about Ramadan, meeting all my friends, and we're still good friends till today. In Masjid al-Rahman, where I usually attend, we have a lecture every night, and it's usually on a specific topic. Last year, I remember the lectures that we did were on Asma'ullah al-Husna. So we'd pick several names every night and and the lecturer would go into a discussion of what those names meant, using the Quran and the Ahadith. The year prior, we did tafsir of the certain small surah in the Quran. So for example, he would pick a small surah in the Quran and we would go into tafsir of that surah. And that went for 30 nights or however long the Ramadan was that year. So that's very beneficial. Then we obviously listen to an Arabic lecture from the Sheikh as well. And we have our Quran recitations and Dua al-Iftitah. And we have the other a'mal as well that come with Ramadan. So it is very beneficial to go to the masjid as well. The day of fasting in Ramadan now in Australia, the last time that we fasted last year, it wasn't too long. I think the day ended around between 5 to 5:30 usually. So it wasn't too long, short day. We used to look at the other countries, some countries, like there was a country that had around 23-hour days, and we used to say, like, when that gets to us, it's gonna be hard, you know. But at the same time, you don't really feel it much. Subhanallah, during Ramadan, outside of Ramadan, if you haven't eaten by say 12 o'clock in the afternoon, you feel really hungry, you start to shake. And you can feel the hunger, but during Ramadan, subhanAllah, you don't feel the hunger, you don't feel the urge to eat. And I've heard this from a lot of brothers as well. They say, I don't feel the urge to eat in Ramadan, I feel that spiritual attachment, and it doesn't feel like it's a burden. I still go to university the same, all my classes, all my lectures. It is a bit hard because sometimes during the day you are tired. Just in terms of, there's no like priority with the university. Like in terms like sometimes, a lot of times I was in class and I would have to break my fast like an hour late because I was stuck back listening to the lecture, and you can't get up during the middle of the lecture and tell the lecturer like, I want to leave to go eat. So it does get a bit difficult, but there's no special priority as in assignments are due the same time, the exams are the same time. I even remember last year in one of the semesters, 3 of my exams fell right in the middle of Ramadan. And I had to do the exams normal. There's no special consideration. You can't tell them I'm fasting, so I can't do the exams now. There's no special consideration for students in that regards. Some of the difficulties that you can face with Ramadan and university is sometimes your exams can be during Ramadan, and sometimes like iftar will come and you're still in the lecture, listening to the lecture, and the lecture's going on and you don't know how to, you can't tell the lecturer, I want to leave and go and eat. So I remember one time, a few years back, I was sitting in the lecture and it came time for iftar. So I just sat in the lecture for an hour or so until iftar came, and most of the food court was closed. So I ran out. Just in time I made it to one of the food places and I told them, look, I haven't eaten, I'm still fasting. And I knew they were Muslims, so they told me, look, we'll make you something. And it was right before they closed. Otherwise I would have had to wait till I got home. Might have been a few hours before I ate. Like some people say this is a difficulty that you face. I don't necessarily see it as a difficulty because it doesn't happen too often, and it's just sort of part of the struggle. It's part of Ramadan, and you accept it being a Muslim. You put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you don't think that, oh, I'm going to eat 2 hours late, or I'm going to eat an hour late, because you know in the end you're doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of my, in terms of like asking, friends asking questions or colleagues asking questions in Ramadan, a lot of times they don't really understand what it is. They just think it's not eating food. So they'll say like, so you don't eat food for 30 days or however long Ramadan ends up being that year. And some of them don't know that it's from the time of Fajr or to the time of Maghrib that we don't eat. They think that it's for that period, just the 30 days, like we don't eat the whole time. I tell them, no, we can eat at the end of Maghrib. But they think it's just abstaining from food. It's hard to explain to them the spiritual aspect of Ramadan, and it's sort of, they find it a bit like foreign or strange to them, like to explain that, oh, there's these spiritual aspects of Ramadan as well. This is the main reason why we do it. It's not about not eating the food. There's more temptation here, like you're exposed to more. And it's easier to, in that split second, to forget that you're fasting, and your eyes may gaze at something or your eyes may wander. And it's a lot of the brothers talk about it, and they say that's the hardest thing about being here during the month of Ramadan, that there's so much temptation or haram around us. And you don't really think of it. The sad thing is you don't really think of those things outside of the month of Ramadan. And then when the month of Ramadan comes, it gets really difficult because you start to notice it more because you're trying to avoid it. Whereas the month of Ramadan should like help us or educate us to be like that during the whole year or our whole life. But that's probably the hardest aspect of it. In terms of like other celebrations, like non-Muslim celebrations, especially not only if they fall during the month of Ramadan, but even outside the month of Ramadan, I've never been one to always make it clear to my colleagues that if there's any activity there like drinking or non-Muslim activities, I don't attend, I don't go to those things. Just last week at work, they told me that they were going to the bar to drink alcohol, and I told them, look, you know, I'm Muslim. They told me you don't have to drink, you can just drink water. I tell them, look, it's not about that. I can't be in that environment. So generally, I avoid those type of things. I tell them, you know, have a happy holiday and enjoy it, enjoy your time off. But I never go to those sort of celebrations where there's non-Islamic activity. I always use the Ramadan, or I try to always use it in the sense where I use it as a springboard for the rest of the year, for things that I want to improve on, where before at the beginning of the month I say, these are the things that I have to work on, and this is how I want to be by the end of the month. And I try to, by the end of the month, what I am, what I've improved on, I try to say, oh, I don't want these things to change by the time I come next year. And that's probably the hardest thing. So the advice I can give is try to think of every day, whether you're not eating, you're abstaining from food or not, try to think of every day as if you're fasting from haram. We go to the centres and the masajid, and we listen to lectures, but there seems to be a neglect for books and reading. Where I learned the most is, I do encourage going to lectures and the masajid and the centres, but for me nothing can ever replace reading. So whatever books you can find, there's lots of bookshops around here, even around us in Sydney, in Australia. Whatever you can find, you know, pick up books and read in topics you're interested in, read to learn, and that's how you'll get closer to Allah and your religion, by reading.